Okay, well, welcome all to the July 15th council meeting and the reorganization. We will reorganize tonight and we have...
Oh, it's her.
He's very opinionated, but he's also like a really doesn't want to offend.
Hello, Greg.
I'm like, I'm opinionated and here's my opinion.
Hello.
Hello. So let's see. So I've got some feedback and all. So I'm just going to wait a second until everyone kind of mutes.
I know we need a sign when we know if he's on mute or not.
Let's see. Okay, so I will begin with a roll call vote.
Okay, Ashfield.
Great vacation.
I will.
Someone is not muted, I think, and there's background noise.
You just muted. Okay.
Okay.
Again, roll call vote.
All right. So, okay, Bernardston.
Here.
Okay. Buckland. Charlemont.
Here.
Oh. Coleraine.
Here.
Conway.
Here.
Deerfield.
Here.
Irving.
Here.
Gill.
I'll tell you.
Here.
Greenfield.
Here.
I know I saw Danny here somewhere. Danny, are you here? Okay, well, maybe she bounced off. Holly. Heath. Leverett. Leiden.
Here.
Monroe. Montague.
Here.
New Salem.
Here.
Northfield.
Here.
Orange.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Shelburne.
Here.
Shutesbury.
Here.
Sunderland. Warwick. Wendell. Oh, sorry. Whately. Oh, Lynn. Okay. Bill Perlman, regionally elected.
Here.
Jay, you're here. Yes, still here. And Jim Bassford.
Here.
Okay. Yeah.
And Rebecca, Danny's here, and
I'm
Sarah
here.
Ren was having audio issues, so Charlemont is here.
Okay, Danny. All right, hold on, scrolling up. Charlemont, thank you.
I was here, but not like here. I'm here.
Okay, so we are 81.97% with 19 people, so we're in great shape.
Wonderful. So reorganization every July before we hear the reports from council committees and staff members, the council holds its annual reorganization meeting, voting to elect officers for this body and to appoint members to the executive committee. Jim Bassford will give us a nominating committee report.
A nominating committee made up of myself and two other executive committee members met last week to discuss possible nominations. We recommend the following slate of officers: the Chair of Council, Trevor McDaniel of Deerfield; Vice Chair, Greg Seneca of Gill; Secretary Clerk, Kevin Fox of Coleraine; Council appointment to Executive Committee, Greenfield Mayor Roxanne Wiedengarten; Council appointed to the Executive Committee, Kevin Fox Coleraine.
Are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing no motions from the floor, is there a motion to cast one ballot for the slate of officers as presented by the nominating committee?
I move that we cast one ballot for the slate of officers as indicated in the report of the nominating committee.
Second.
We have a second from...
I seconded Greenfield.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? let's take a roll call vote. We need a roll call vote? Is that correct for this?
I
Yes,
believe
okay.
so.
Perfect.
Okay, Ashfield. Bernardston,
Yes.
Buckland, Charlemont,
Yes.
Coleraine,
Yes.
Conway,
Yes.
Deerfield,
Yes.
Irving,
Yes.
Gill,
Yes.
Greenfield,
Yes.
Holly, Heath, Leverett, Leiden,
Here. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Monroe, Montague,
Oh,
Aye.
New Salem,
Yes.
Northfield,
yes.
Orange,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shelburne,
Yes.
Shutesbury,
Yes.
Sunderland, Warwick, Wendell, Whately, and Bill Pearlman,
Yeah. Yes.
Jay DePuccio,
Yes.
and Jim Bassford.
Yes.
Okay, and we have some new officers. All in favor?
Thank you.
Congrats.
That's great. Thank you all very much for serving, and thank you. I'm excited to chair again this year. So, so the council also appoints 3 members to the Transportation Planning Organization, the TPO, but these are 3-year terms, so no changes to these roles are needed at this time. West County appointments to the TPO are Heather Butler at Buckland, Central County is Steve Ellis of Montague, and East County is Gabe Volker of Orange. So I guess, and the next item would be to adopt the minutes for April 15th, 2021.
Okay.
So moved.
Oops, so moved. Who was that, please?
Steve.
All
Steve?
right.
I'll second that. Michelle Leiden.
And all right. Ashfield. Bernardston,
Yes.
Buckland, Charlemont,
Yes.
Coleraine,
Yes.
Conway,
Yes.
Deerfield,
Yes.
Irving,
Yes.
Gill,
Yes.
Greenfield,
Yes.
Holly, Heath, Leverett, Leiden,
Yes.
Monroe, Montague,
Yes.
New Salem,
Abstain.
Okay. Let's see.
I was not at the meeting.
Okay, Northfield,
Yes.
Orange,
Yes.
Rowe,
Abstain. I was not at the meeting.
Sorry, my abstention column is not working for some reason. Okay. Shelburne,
Yes.
Shutesbury,
Yes.
Sunderland, Warwick, Wendell, Whately, Bill,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
and Jim Bassford.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, passes with 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item is the council chair update. So I wanted to welcome new council members. I'm not sure if they're here, but I'll mention their names. If they are, please say hello. Charles Garbel or Garbiel, new select board member in Gill, has joined us as the alternate for that town. Is Charles here? If not, we welcome him an extension. So Sarah Reynolds, Charlemont Town Administrator, is the alternate from that town, has joined us this evening, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, welcome. Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So the FY22 council meeting dates. So please mark your calendars. The council will meet next on October 20th, 2021, when we will begin to discuss the FY23 budget, and again on January 27th, 2022, when we will vote on the budget proposal. Although we typically meet on the third Thursdays, we will meet later in January to accommodate those who wish to attend the Massachusetts Municipal Association annual meeting, which will be January 21st and 22nd this year. Be nice to get back there and attend in person. So one of the questions is how to meet in October, in person, remotely, or using the hybrid model. And I guess I'd like to just maybe have a little bit of a quick discussion on that. I'm always in favor of seeing people, face to face and meeting in a room and collaborating together and talking. But we do cover a large territory, and so as we get into winters and stuff, it's later. And so I was curious how people feel about using, as I'll just speak from experience in Deerfield, as we've moved from a fully remote to a hybrid model, it has been a bit challenging to do both, because it's very difficult with people on Zoom and then people in the room, and just the crosstalk and just making sure that people at home have a voice and they can hear, and people in attendance can hear people at home. So we're investing in quite a bit of sound equipment here and a new camera to make sure that we can do that appropriately. But it's been a challenge in the meantime, and I believe that FERCog has been working on technology in our room, so can make it happen right now. But I'm just curious, Linda, do you want to speak at all to that, or what are your?
Yeah, we have invested in technology. We have new technology that can enable hybrid meetings pretty easily. I don't know if you've seen the technology called the OWL. It is technology that will turn the camera towards the voice that is speaking. So in that sense, it's very good. What we've heard from the people who are attending remotely is that the pre-meeting banter can be hard to listen to. It sounds kind of loud and garbled, and that what remote participants see is a panoramic view of everyone in the room across the top of the screen, which makes for very small people. Other than that, in terms of audio, it's working well.
That's good. That's good to hear. So, I mean, just personally, I think I'm excited to get back in person. It's been nice to see residents come to our meetings. But, and I think if anybody, as I said in my meeting last night, if you really have, something to say or want to hear really good, would not worry about, lightning taking out technology or all the things that kind of happen with technology, please come to the meeting. But certainly if if it's easier for family issues or whatever to stay at home, I think that's probably appropriate too as we go through this. Anybody else have a comment want to talk about it at all?
Just a clarification. So are you suggesting a hybrid model, Trevor?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of what I'd like to hear from people. Are they okay with a hybrid model? I mean, that's really what we've been able to do with legislation lately. I'm just curious how people feel about that.
I have similar mixed experience based on our select board and historical commission. It's hard sometimes to get the remote people totally engaged and in sync with what's going on, but I'm open to the option because now we're all used to it. And
yeah,
I think personally, I'll go in person because the entire time I've been on the FERCog Council, I've not met anyone face to face. So
Right.
I'll put that on my calendar. But yeah, I would just throw it out there. It's kind of a mixed bag, but I don't think we really have a choice.
Yeah.
Trevor?
Yes.
I would just add that I think that if the social distancing requirements are still in effect to accommodate unvaccinated people in a room, then you pretty much have to have a hybrid option.
Yes.
So I don't know that there's a lot that we need to discuss.
Perfect. Anybody else have anything to say? No? Okay.
I've been happy with my experience with the remote meetings in Wendell, and I'm clear that there are some issues to work out technology-wise and so forth. I'd like a commitment to trying to work those issues out.
Sure. Absolutely.
This is Ellen from Shutesbury. I kind of like the idea of a hybrid, especially in the winter,
Yes.
because just because, you know, Greenfield may not have snow doesn't mean that everybody doesn't have snow.
Correct. Yeah.
And that way we wouldn't have to worry about, well, we're canceling it and moving it to the next week. And, you know,
Sure.
oh my God, we're going to go into February and that's violating the charter and all that. We've been through it, been there, done that.
Okay.
And Bill Perlman also, the hybrid model allows us doesn't give us the necessity of driving it after dark.
Yes. Yeah, I think it makes sense that we'll give that hybrid model a shot, not fully remote, but we'll do people who want to come and meet together. We'll do that. And then those can attend remotely. So great. Sounds good. Committee vacancies. We currently have openings on the finance and personnel committees, and we urge folks who may not have yet volunteered for council committees to step forward. It's a good way to get involved and work with other get to know the council operations. So please step up if you can, so we're fully seated in each committee. And then just, before we hear what the executive committee has been working on, just a reminder that we have new members and that people are joining us using various methods. So please use your name and town town you represent when speaking to the group, so we can all get to know each other. So thank you. So next item is the executive committee update, and we'll hear from Chair Jay DiPuccio.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Jay.
I'll review most of these notes. If you have your council report in front of you, you'll see this is presented in substance. The American Rescue Plan, the committee learned of the parameters of the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funding mechanism, which is providing federal stimulus funds to address the impacts of COVID-19. We endorsed the writing of a council of government's letter that reminds the state to stay aware of rural issues and to perhaps use some of those funds to address and promote rural needs. One of the things that we're looking at is a COVID after action report. Remember, we discussed the scope and cost of a regional COVID-19 after action report to analyze not only how the COG performed with respect to the pandemic, but how the county and the region responded, and to get ready for what will certainly be another event someday. A request for proposals are now being drafted by staff for a third uninvolved, unbiased party to analyze what's happened and to draft an improvement plan. We expect the process to take approximately a year, be broken into a second phase, which will involve a strategic planning process. The Mohawk Area Public Health Coalition is conducting a similar after action report this summer and fall, focusing exclusively on EDS sites, emergency dispensing sites, that many of you were involved in planning over a decade ago. in response to COVID, and what improvements need to be made to those EDS plans to be responsive in the future. Plans need to be made more flexible to include long-term events. I know that I was involved in Montague's EDS plan back in 2008, and we drilled it several years in a row. And yeah, that plan would not have worked for what we face this year. So certainly that kind of review is important. The Western Region Homeland Security Advisory Council is also conducting an after-action report on COVID response for all 4 counties in Western Massachusetts. The AARs are conducted by MAPCO and the Advisory Council, as well as internal emergency preparedness staff. Deerfield River, Wild River Scenic Designation. The Executive Committee recently endorsed the Planning Board's recommendation to support a feasibility study that would consider and evaluate the Deerfield River as a federally designated scenic and wild river. It's presented by Charlie Ochowski, who's leading the effort. The designation, which could take years, presents no federal limitations on abutting private owners' use of their land, but does come with the promise of federal funding for river protection and other activities. The Executive Committee also met as the Economic Development District, EDD. We convened to review and oversee the community engagement with and adopt the 2021 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategic Annual Performance Report. There's a mouthful. Members also appointed 3 new members to the SEDS committee. Emergency communication migration to Comiers. Members were regularly updated on the progress of emergency response radio purchases and distribution of the county's response units. I'm sure you've all heard of what's going on in your own communities. And finally, redistricting. Because of population decline, we now have 5 senators for Western Mass with only 4.5 districts worth of people. So we'll have to remove an arm and a leg from one of our representatives. The Executive Committee supported Linda's attendance at the state congressional redistricting hearing, at which she testified that our legislators now serve communities with similar interests and asked that our congressional and state legislative districts stay as close to what they are now as possible. And we all know that is so critically important to our rural reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. And now we'll hear Executive Director update from Linda.
Hey, everyone. Like Jay, I'm going to assume that you read the council updates. So as always, I'm just going to highlight some of the many updates we are providing. Let me start with the Legislative Rural Schools Commission. This is a commission created by Senator Hines filed. It's co-chaired by Senator Hines and Representative Blay. And I sit on the commission as a member of the Rural Policy Advisory Commission. The project, the review is going to look at 5 topic areas: cost of health insurance and OPEB, local aid issues, and included in that is minimum contribution and hold harmless. Under the category of school choice is not only school choice, but charter and vocational school formulas. SPED is another category, and regionalization is the final category. All of the members of the commission were asked to choose what committee they wanted to be on. And I thought I said local aid, school choice, or regionalization, but it was interpreted as and instead of or. So I'm on all 3 of these subcommittees. So your help and involvement and feedback on the things that I should be listening for and advocating for would be really good. The point of the commission is to report in March of 2022 with tangible recommendations of how the rural school conditions can be improved. So please help me and send me your feedback and thoughts. We talked about this at the last council meeting and several council meetings actually. We hired Community Paradigm Associates to conduct an organizational assessment of the COG, and really to look at the COG's current structure and compare it against other high-performing comparable organizations to ready ourselves for upcoming retirements. We have a lot of staff that have been with us for more than 2 decades, and we're all about the same age. So the report came out with several very specific recommendations, but the high-level executive summary recommendations are that we should create a stronger mission statement that reflects the values and focus of the COG, that we should actively involve new government leaders and especially town administrators more robustly, that we should be aware of the growing for growth's sake, avoid that, but also don't get stale. So trying to find that balance. We should begin succession thinking now. 3 new positions were recommended, a deputy director position, and the idea of that is that the executive director always be working externally and outwardly, and the deputy director really focuses on internal operations. There really isn't any way to build that into the budget until we start having retirements at the department level and department head level, and then we could build that in if we chose to do that. Communications position, which we talked about at the last council meeting, and then an HR position, although the study points out that really you need an organization of about 100 employees before you can support a full HR position, and we are at about 55 now, full and part-time combined. So it might be that we want to consider sharing an HR position with a couple of towns like we've tried before, or with other organizations. The other 2 things are to strengthen the personnel management system, including looking at compensation and employment policy issues, and always be aware of what kind of new programming or advocacy needs are needed by our municipalities. So we will continue to read that report and think about recommendations to implement that could include doing some strategic planning with all of the council or a subset of the council, and we'll get back to you if we start to pursue that. I wanted to point out the Franklin County Stormwater Plan that was just completed. It's a very cool study with a story map that teaches you a lot about stormwater. The one thing that I learned is that in a precipitation event, like we've had every day for the last 100 years, in undeveloped area, 50% of the precipitation is absorbed by the land. In developed areas, only 15% is. And so huge amounts of runoff are creating erosion, washouts, pavement degradation, pollution in our water bodies, etc. And this report looks at ways we can manage stormwater and deploy best management practices to take care of our stormwater and our environment. It's a good study. Look at it. As Jay said, we're working very closely with Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development and Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to really push for the state's allocation of American Rescue Plan funding, to think about and consider using the money to solve long-held problems, to think about regional solutions to problems, and to make sure that we do not forget the needs of rural Massachusetts. We have already started talking to Greenfield and Montague about the idea of either a regional anaerobic digester or a dewatering facility for our sludge, so that our communities are not transporting sludge to Lowell or the Blackstone River Valley. And we are working with EOHED to really advocate for that kind of regional thinking.
Thank you.
I hope you saw that Collective Purchasing has moved some of their contracts to DocuSign, so be on the lookout for that. So far, our feedback is that that is working well and efficiently. And I hope you saw in the recorder that we have started a collaboration with Greenfield Community College, that we are have a municipal accountant training program at GCC. It started on June 14th. It is an online self-paced program that's being taught and advised by Joyce Muka, one of our favorite regional accountants. And the exciting thing is that when in the registration opened up, the class completely filled up, and there is a waiting list that exceeds the openings available for the first class. So we are pretty excited that this is going to be a way for us to really address the shortage of town accountants in Franklin County and maybe in the state. We are also working with GCC to look at creating another course that really looks at municipal leadership and municipal roles to begin to address the baby boomer retirement of municipal employees. Let me give you a quick Comers migration update. I hope that you have found the semi-regular updates helpful. Right now, the majority of Motorola orders and the bulk Kenwood order, all of these radios have arrived. They've been programmed, they've been distributed. We are still waiting for small orders to either give some departments their first radios or to complete the orders for other departments. We did just discover that there is a programming error for the Kenwood portables that the Mass State Police is going to fix for us. And all in all, the project is going remarkably smoothly and remarkably well, and lots of credit go to the town of Deerfield for letting us store all of the radios in the police station and giving us a bit of Chief Pachorik's time to help with programming. Kurt Seaman from Greenfield Fire, who also works for the COG as a radio technician, has been helping with the programming, and those two have done yeoman's work getting the radios programmed and out as quickly as possible. And then credit to Claire and our finance team with managing a whole lot of minute detail about $3 million worth of equipment ordering.
ERCOT should be very proud, and Linda and all of you that have worked on that. It's an amazing, it's a large project, obviously, and it's gone very smoothly. And
it went so fast. You know, we spent 3 years screaming for this to happen, and then it happened in like a month, and we were like,
yeah,
that happened so fast.
Great.
We really didn't expect it to go that quickly.
Good planning.
HMCC, our Health and Medical Coordinating Coalition, just stocked up on a whole bunch of emergency equipment and supplies. They're going to create a catalog of what is available to all of you to use and borrow. And so be on the lookout for that catalog soon. Our next Select Board Essentials Workshop is Select Board One-on-One on August 19th. And give Phoebe a bit of congratulations that we have been awarded a Public Health Excellence Grant by the Department of Public Health, which allows us to expand funding in our health district. We have already hired another full-time nurse, and we will be looking to hire another full-time health agent. So congrats to Phoebe and the towns that do that. And finally, the last thing, let me talk about rail just for a second. Thank you to all of you that attended the Northern Tier Rail project launch. We are excited about that project and hope that that feasibility study leads to a positive outcome. The other thing to let you know is that the Valley Flyer service is going remarkably well, even without the relaunch of the Vermonter, which doesn't happen until Monday. Ridership on the Valley Flyer is higher than most other routes in the Northeast corridor. And so that is a really good indication about our pilot service being permanent service. And we are very excited about that. So if any of you have been taking the train, thank you. Keep it up. That's all I've got, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Linda. Really appreciate that.
Unless there are questions, sorry, I went really fast.
Yeah, any questions for Linda? If not, Planning Board, Jim Bassford, to give us an update.
Sure. Basically, make this short and sweet. As mentioned by Jay earlier, the Franklin Regional Planning Board recommended the support of the feasibility study for studying the potential designation of eligible segments of the Deerfield River and its tributaries as a national wild and scenic river. And I think that's important that we did that, and the executive committee followed up on that. So we just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, Deerfield did the same as a local community, and I think it's great. It's a great idea. Let's see. So Finance Committee update. Newly elected chair, Michelle Rossio?
Caruso.
Caruso, thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Great.
I wanted to thank Lynn for her many years of service as chair of this committee. She did a great job. On your agenda, it says review final vaccine clinic costs, and we could not do that because we don't expect the health insurance to come in for the next few months. So it could take up to 4 months to receive that revenue, and we will hopefully be looking at it at our October meeting. But what we did look at was FY21. It was reviewed with some minor budget amendments. We approved carry forward requests for unspent money from the organizational assessment, and we can use some of these dollars for the study's recommendations, implementation, for the website overhaul project, which was delayed due to COVID, and the capital reserve account, and the emergency capital reserve account. We also looked at FY22 budget, and this is on track. The next item is a little bit complicated, so I am going to ask for help from Linda and Claire to jump in if I need them. We want to revise the emergency fund motion, the emergency reserve account that was created at the last council meeting. Those of you who were there was quite a lot of discussion on this. Mm-hmm. And the second and third motion amendments that we passed on April 15th place conditions and thresholds on the use of this fund. And we ended up editing the proposed motion. The voted revisions, while well-intended, ended up with some lack of clarity. Also, our auditor looked at this because we called it a revolving account. And our auditor said that because the future use of this fund may or may not have an eventual reimbursement source, we are not creating a special activity or revolving account, but a reserve fund. Sorry. Okay. And the request at the last council meeting for the definition of a qualifying uses of the fund. So what we would like to do this evening is two things. We would like to bring this back for further discussion and final vote in October.
Okay.
Waiting until October to ensure we are creating the account correctly and define emergency with the first and second review to ensure comfort of the council is the Finance Committee's recommendation. Because we want everyone to feel comfortable. I think I said that twice, sorry. So the Finance Committee recommends 2 actions this evening. To amend the vote taken at the April council meeting and take a vote to create an emergency response reserve account and review the defined uses for the emergency reserve as a first reading. Does anyone have any questions about that?
It does. I would just say, I think it makes sense, just seeing this, it does make sense. I mean, we'll have possibly some numbers, I think, by then as well, right? And then it does make sense. I didn't remember we set it up as a revolving fund, but it does make sense that it would be a reserve fund instead. So I'm in support of that.
Okay. So the April vote, after 3 amendments, read to establish the Finance Committee as the primary approving authority for budget authorizations of the Regional Emergency Revolving Account as established by COVID-19 Vax Clinic operations and reimbursements, and to require full FERCog council approval of spending in excess of 75% of the fund's balance. So our proposed vote for this evening is to amend the vote taken at the April 15th council meeting, renaming the Regional Emergency Revolving Account to the Regional Emergency Response Reserve Account.
So make a motion to do that one renaming vote. So make a motion to support that.
Second.
Oh, who seconded? She was
New
Salem. New Salem second.
New Salem
Oh,
second.
New Salem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
Windmill second.
So could we hear about some of the restrictions on access to the account and what the qualifications for and what an event would be?
We
Yep,
can
we're
definitely
getting right to that.
We can definitely do that. Let's take a roll call on just the naming of the vote to a reserve fund, and then we'll get into that for sure.
Okay, Ashfield, Bernardston,
Yeah.
Buckland, Charlemont,
Yes.
Coleraine,
Yes.
Conway,
Yeah. Yes.
Deerfield,
Yes.
Irving,
Yes.
Gill,
Yes.
Greenfield,
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Hawley, Heath, Leverett, Leiden,
Yes.
Monroe. Sorry. Bex, let's see. Montague,
Yes.
New Salem,
Yes.
Northfield,
Yes.
Orange,
Incoming call from 508-356-8842 for Bill Perlman.
Jane, you're muted.
Incoming call from 508-356-8842.
Me, Jane? I said yes.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shelburne,
Yes.
Shrewsbury,
Yes.
Sunderland, Warwick, Wendell,
Yes.
Whately, Bill Perlman,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
and Jim.
Yes.
Okay, I
Thank
think that's
you.
all in favor. Passes.
Okay. And now a discussion of the second vote.
So we can, Rebecca, do you want me to share my screen for the definition that we came up with, or?
Let me see. I was doing the
If
person.
you enable it, I have it open.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
So at the last council meeting, we were asked to define what is a emergency and when the account would be used. And so we had staff create the definition. It's been reviewed by executive committee and reviewed by finance committee. We did not have a chance to send it to council members in advance. So what the finance committee, if I may speak for the finance committee, Michelle?
Yes, you may.
What the finance committee decided last night to do was to consider this a first reading. So we'll review the definition now, and then we will, oh, there goes my cat. Just for all of you that don't know, I have a very old cat with dementia, and he is very, very loud. I'm sorry. We will review it tonight. We will also email it to you so that you can see it. And then we will come back in October and finalize the creation of this reserve account. So let me share what we came up with. Can everyone see this?
Good.
So here's what we came up with is the Regional Emergency Reserve Account is designed to be used by the COG to quickly and effectively respond to an emergency event that is impacting the region or a sub-region. We defined emergency events as natural or man-made, hurricane, ice storm, tornado, or microburst, bombing, explosion, radiological, nuclear, biological weapon, pandemic or other disease outbreak, or any emergency event or situation declared by the governor, the CDC, or FEMA. And then we tried to define what type of activities would use this reserve fund and came up with the opening of a multi-agency coordination center, emergency GIS mapping, distribution of personal protective equipment or other emergency equipment and infrastructure, deployment of the Franklin County Incident Management Action Team for a Franklin County event, emergency nursing or public health response, and emergency assessment and condemnation of buildings or structures. And then finally, per the discussion last quarter, we also talked about what the fund cannot be used for. So without council approval, the fund cannot be used for planning activities, non-emergency events, activities, or projects, or offsetting municipal assessments for municipal service programs. That is what we came up with. Does anyone have any immediate questions or thoughts, or we will email this to everyone for your thoughtful consideration over the next quarter?
Can I just jump in? Philip from Conway. Can I just jump in with a question? So just as a town that has had a tornado in the very recent history, we were left with two significant expenses as a town. Number one was the responsibility to repair our own guardrails on our own town roads. And number two was the reimbursement, the lack of any reimbursement to private landowners to deal with the numerous large trees that fell on their own private property. So would any one of those would any one of those categories of expenses be subject to reimbursement?
We definitely did not think about private landowner expenses for sure. So council members will need to consider that. And I'm sorry.
The other was guardrails for the
guardrail and road repair.
Linda?
I don't think we thought of that one either. So what do people think about that?
Linda?
Yes.
Andrew Baker from Shelburne Select Board. And I guess my reading of this, I think, one, it's a good thing to have as a kind of after action thing coming out of the pandemic. But I think the operative words in this outline are, but are not limited to. And so it seems to me that maybe a good addendum to this I think it's necessary to have those words in there because I can think of many, many different possible scenarios and uses of funding that would be needed that are not included in this list. So I think what might be helpful is to add at the end of this a definition of the process by which needs and requests that are not enumerated here would be entertained by the council.
Absolutely. That's the work that the Finance Committee still needs to do and will bring back in, what month is it? October. We'll bring back in October. What we wanted to review now was kind of definitions because we promised we would come back with that. But this, the auditor's recent ruling of revolving account versus reserve makes the Finance Committee and staff want to slow down to make sure that we are creating this perfectly correctly. But yes,
Correct.
That will be what we present in October.
And I have Steve Ellis's hand up, and then I see Bill Perlman and Jane as well. So Steve,
Thank you. Hi, Trevor. I'll put my question on the parking lot and instead speak to the suggestion that was just made. My general sense is that as this list was crafted, it avoided any suggestion that the FERCog would be paying for, repair of infrastructure and physical improvements. Those kind of reserve funds we would look at, I think, as something that, while it would be great to have a regional reserve fund for those kind of things, that's not what FERCog does. FERCog does not buy guardrails and reimburse landowners. It feels outside of the mission and scope a little bit to me. So that would be my comment. And after this element of the conversation is done, I guess I was most interested to hear whether there were specific suggestions that occurred in your subcommittee where you said, should we include this? And if there were things that were left on the cutting room floor as potential call outs for eligible expenses, what might those have been? Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Do anybody want to reply to that first before we go on, or just kind of take comments at the moment?
Well, I can. I have a similar thought in that the list is one that defines operationally what the council would be doing during an emergency. And the funding, as I understood it, is to pay for the council's effort. I don't see this as going to individual towns or anything else. That is MEMA's job, that's FEMA's job, and not ours. And I think this is a functional and procedural document.
I think I would second that too. I agree with that completely. It feels like it's money set up to address these issues as a council and as, operationally, but not as a bank of money towns can come and ask for emergency stuff. Curious what other people think. Jane, you
can I just answer real quick Steve, things that fell on the cutting room floor, is that the expression?
Yep.
Were things that were not emergency response related. We considered a lot of emergency planning or long-term planning, and what we cut out was anything related to planning. The idea of this is it is response. And the thinking about that is most of the COGS funding sources are planning funding sources and not response funding sources.
Jane?
So I would just caution you that one emergency will wipe your fund out. And you need to do a lot more work on your parameters to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure. I will give you an example. I'm working for DEP at the moment on PFAS problem. There's PFAS in a lot of public wells, and we put out a grant program that said if you have had to do emergency response to discovery of PFAS in your public water supply, here's a grant program. Just let us know what the emergency is. We have $2 million to give away over a year. The first grant round was an application for $3 million, and that won't help us with any of the emergencies that happen for the rest of the year. So, you know, an emergency is an emergency, and it bears some really careful thinking about what is the best way to help somebody who has an emergency. You know, it might be planning money, or it might be assistance with grant writing or coordination or something like that. I don't think it's cleaning up trees. If I can help you with this at all, please let me know. I do this all day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, Philip from Conway, I would agree that from what you're all saying and from the purpose that I could see, cleaning up trees on private property doesn't match too well. But I would also say that the parameters could be tightened up to make it clear that it's not for the purpose of reimbursing private landowners or whatever.
Yep. Sure.
And that in general, the kind of limiting parameters that, because once you give the authority to a subcommittee to initiate the expenditure of money, I'd like to see these types of suggestions rendered into the limiting parameters.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none. Thank you. So that'll be for our first reading. We'll take it under advisement, look at it again in October, and
yeah. And if anyone, Jane or Phil or anyone else, wants to send ideas and recommendations and thoughts, that would be super helpful, because several minds are better than a few.
Great. So that would conclude the Finance Committee update and Personnel Committee update. Bill Perlman?
Yeah. We have two issues that we talked about since the last council meeting. The federal government has declared Juneteenth now a paid federal holiday. We were talking about how to make it fit in, but the Personnel Committee is accepting that we will now include it as a paid holiday as for council employees. However, we are very aware that it was the feeling of the council that we did not want to add a paid holiday to the list of the ones that we had. We had 13, and the recommendation that we came up with was to remove one of the other holidays. And after talking to committees and staff members, it was decided to eliminate Patriots Day and add Juneteenth, so that we follow the federal government and we do not add a paid holiday to our list. So there is no financial impact to this at all. That was the first issue, and we are presenting it today as a first reading, and we'll bring it up as a second reading in October. And I gather that what's on the screen now is a list of our holidays, removing Patriots Day and adding Juneteenth. So without anything, the other issue that we talked about was the creation of a manager's job as communications manager, which we spoke about again at the last session. And one of the things we talked about was a list of responsibilities and job description. And what we have in terms of what this person would be doing is they would be responsible for overseeing and coordinating all public-facing communications of the agency, press and media relations, the website, social media presence, and visual materials. They will also collaborate with all the departments and programs to promote and explain the council's work. It's my belief that not only don't all the towns necessarily know everything we do, but certainly not all the citizens know everything we do. And we really need to educate people as to the full extent of what goes on here. The other responsibility would assist with internal communications, council and committee communications, other external stakeholder communications, and legislative. We are constantly talking to legislators. We are constantly going back and forth between committees. We periodically have joint committee meetings, but it is important to let other committees know what's going on in other sections of the council. And other stakeholders, other organizations who work in similar fields, and certainly our legislative delegation and potentially, at the congressional level as well. The budget was developed with a 25% reduction in the regional services assessment to the municipalities. And the addition of this position will have no financial impact or burden on our towns. So this is not adding to your assessment in any way. We have the funds internally to be able to fund this. And so if that should not be a criterion in whether, in how you feel about this position. The Personnel Committee has okayed the creation of the position, and we have reviewed the job description, and basically we're just tonight letting you know what's been happening.
So one question I have, would we be going, I think this committee already voted to move forward with this position, right? Or at least put it in the budget. And would you be at this point going out to advertise? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I would think so. If not immediately, then very shortly.
Very shortly, once you get everything in a row.
Yeah, the creation of jobs within the organization is not generally decided on by the council. It's our executive director makes those decisions. Occasionally, she will talk to other committees about it. Certainly, if it's a financial impact or other. And this was presented to personnel, to finance, and executive.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Or Jim or for Bill? Hearing none, we'll move on to our last item of the evening, which is a discussion of opt-out policy for mosquitoes. B had kind of reached out and asked, if we could have a discussion on this subject, because it kind of came up last minute as everybody was jockeying for their, annual town meetings, and, what do? We don't want spraying. What does it mean? What are the impacts? So I know B had kind of put quite a bit of information together. Do you want to start off, B, on what your thoughts are and what Northfield's working on?
Yeah, sure. And well, I'll just a little show and tell. So I'm just finishing my freshman year on the select board in Northfield, and I have a very thick folder on mosquitoes. So, and it's probably going to grow. Anyway, so based on that experience, which all happened in the last couple of months of my freshman year, I wanted to share Northfield's experience and then kind of put in a few key guaranteed to get some discussion going, questions. But before I start, I just wanted to double check. So is everybody aware and is aware of the topic of the state aerial spraying? Okay, so I don't have to do an intro or anything. And I'm working off of a recent editorial that was published in the Greenfield Recorder on June 23rd by Senator Comerford. So I think that's a good description. So the Northfield, I don't think this is really different than a lot of people, but I'm just going to give you the Northfield overview of opting out of aerial spraying, what we're doing going forward, and then resulting thoughts and questions. So number one, the timing. Northfield wanted to opt out, but even with the 2-week extension and squeezing in extra meetings, we were past the budget and warrant process and literally going into town meeting and election. We actually had one of our meetings like a half an hour before the town meeting. The notification of opting out seemed late and poorly timed. In terms of risk, in talking with other towns, especially Deerfield, so many thanks to Trevor and to Carolyn from Deerfield, especially Carolyn. And I don't think I'm going to be the only small town who admits this. Without on-the-ground data and an already active plan, as well as dollars and personnel allocated, we felt the financial risk of opting out outweighed the chance of being sprayed. And so consequently opted not to opt out of the spraying process, much to the dismay of the entire select board, as well as many residents in Northfield. So one of the most difficult topics I've actually tackled in my first year. So Northfield going forward, the second bucket, the silver lining is the entire town, the Board of Health and the Select Board are now activated and aware of mosquito control and aerial spraying. So that's the bright side. Our Board of Health is now tracking the issue and interested in developing some expertise. And we're all very interested in what comes out of the task force later this summer. So personally on the Select Board, I'm committed to following up and anticipating a special town meeting in the fall. We plan to tackle the dollar, personnel, and joining the district, the mosquito district, at a special town meeting. We just, given the timing, just could not happen this spring. So I'm committed to following up because my citizens are keeping me, holding my feet to the fire to figure out what the next steps are. So resulting thoughts and questions for all of you. Northfield's experience is not unique. And what I've learned, especially with risk and spraying, but also disease risk, I think, the focus of the aerial spraying was people got so caught up in the aerial spraying that we're losing sight of there's a serious disease risk, and what do we do about that? And that's in my conversation with Carolyn was super helpful because I'm like, wait a minute, Northfield isn't doing anything. So I'm asking this group, what do we think as a group of Western Mass towns? Because also our response to the state is very different than Eastern Mass and the other districts. The Pioneer Valley Mosquito District is different than the other districts. The probably the attitude towards spraying is completely different, west versus east. And what I learned and what I heard in the state listening session was, I heard all these little towns in central and western Mass going, hey, I've got this concern, I got that concern. And, my question is, why put every town, especially small towns? I know that there was some reason, there was a good reason for including the opting out process, but why put all these small towns without the resources and the expertise going through all these, what I call gyrations of right around town meeting and election? And my concern going forward, both personally as well as for a town, is I'm an elected official. I could be voted out of office in a couple of years. And then where does all that mosquito expertise go? And that's why I look at FERCog. We have all these wonderful people and ways of grouping. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid this. The sunlight, the challenges of working from home in your front office on Main Street, facing west. So I guess I'd like to hear from the group is, one, are you hearing back at this point? I think it's due. Are you hearing back on your opting out versus opting in? And what do you think going forward? How do we develop this expertise? And also, how do we support or get more support for the Pioneer Valley Mosquito District? Because my understanding from talking with Carolyn is it's a very tiny district. And I know from reading the recorder, other towns just joined, but I'm sure, an extra 15 to 20,000 isn't enough for that district. So I'll leave it there in your capable hands, Trevor, to manage the discussion.
I'll add thank you. And I'll add a little bit more. When I started as a select board member, maybe a year or so in, Carolyn has been ticks and mosquitoes the whole time. So she educated me a lot on what the issues are. And so we lobbied the state and worked with MDAR on trying to come up with and develop a mosquito district, because we had one in Berkshire, and of course they're all over the eastern part of the state. But obviously the dangers are here, and the mosquitoes are getting, carrying more and more diseases and Zika and all of this. So I was actually not, so we had worked to kind of get this started, and we have a very small skeleton kind of, mosquito district started, and we're different. The only one in the state that is a voluntary contribution right now. If you're out in the eastern part of the state, it just comes right off your cherry sheet. You're automatically, charged to be part of a district. Here it's all voluntary, and we get asked for that because, again, smaller towns. Oh, good, Carolyn did join us. So we had started off, trying to just get it started, and we knew a lot of communities didn't have a lot of money, and there'd be, well, we're not gonna. So we just wanted to make sure that we had at least a starting point, and that is $5,000 to join the district, and really that gets you like in the door and a little bit of assessment. And really the whole thing with this is about understanding what you have now, gathering data and setting a baseline. What do we have for mosquitoes here, for species, and what are they carrying? So that's kind of, Deerfield has been doing this for a while. We've been paying for, I think we funded about $10,000 a year for the last 4 or 5 years to hire at one time an outdoor group that would come in and set up traps and figure out what they are and send them off for testing and pay for that. So that's kind of how people are getting in the door. And then after that, towns can opt as an a la carte. They could pick different things that they may want to do. I was surprised when the state kind of all of a sudden gave this opt-out thing, and Carolyn may have much more background on why the state and the governor did that. But it got everybody like, whoa, what is this? And everybody doesn't want, they think of spraying and like, oh no, they're going to come over with, planes and just kind of bomb our towns. And really, generally that won't happen unless there's a serious emergency. And really what we want people to do, and I'm glad this discussion started, because we want people to join the district. Even if they don't, we want them to fund trapping, understanding what you have, so we have a baseline. We know what's in our valley, up and down the valley, and we can kind of track this stuff. And then you can lobicide, and our Kevin in our highway department goes out with a disc and drops them in all the culverts, the standing ponds, anything like that, to try and really target, so that you don't have to get to the point where you're you have ignored the issue, you don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden you've got to come spray when you really don't know what the issue is. So it's surveillance, testing, understanding what you have, gathering that data, and that takes some time to do. So we hope more people join to do that. We felt in Deerfield that it didn't make sense to opt out because, one, we do have a track record. We know what we have right now because we've been testing. And if there were to be a big outbreak, we don't have the money to pay for aerial spraying. So we thought if there's something major, as major that we need aerial spraying, it means that we've missed something completely, and we don't have the money to hire somebody to come in and spray. So let's let the state pay for that. I don't think it'll come to that in our neck of the woods because we're really on top of the issue. But I'd like to oh, go ahead. And then I wanted to turn it over to Carolyn too, if I missed anything, but questions first.
Trevor, just so Philip from Conway, so Conway did opt out, and we received notice 2 days ago from the state that our opt-out plan was accepted.
Great.
And it wasn't, the paperwork to do it seemed imposing, but we sat down with the town administrator and the Board of Health, and it was about an hour.
Yep.
And focusing on education. I'll be happy to share it with anybody that asks.
Thank you.
But it's nothing to be embarrassed about. But and I know I'm not speaking for my town alone, but town meetings, when they have weighed in on this, have been fiercely opposed to the concept of aerial spraying. Right. And after 2 consecutive attempts to get my town to join the Pioneer committee with that $5,000 putting out there at town meeting, I mean, I'm not a masochist, and I'm never using the word aerial with the word spraying in the same sentence again at town meeting. And it's just not. There's no way. So if my town meeting means anything, it means we're opting out as long as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And we've already received overwhelming support from the town for having done that. So
yeah.
And it's not that hard. And we figured it out that we can test a little bit ourselves and do a little bit for what we're asked to pay from various groups.
So
yes.
So Trevor,
one second. Yeah,
just to respond to the question that was raised from Northfield.
Yes, please.
Shelburne did vote 2-1 to stay opted in, though we did join the mosquito control district for the 5,000. I was the one who voted against opting in. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question that remains with me, and the reason for my no vote on opting in, is that I heard fairly convincing argument that aerial spraying is not effective.
It's not.
So it seems like reserving the right to aerial spray after people start dying of Zika or whatever is reserving the right to do something that's not effective. And so that to me seems to be the question.
Can I just say that? That's
Can I
not
just
really...
finish what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yes,
so that seems to me the most important question to research is whether, if you're going to reserve the right to spray, whether it is in fact an effective solution.
Mm-hmm. This is Wayne from New Salem. We were denied. We opted out also, and we were denied. And I would just like to point out, I think we lost 5 people in the last 50 years for AAA, and yet we should have mandatory COVID inoculations. That's really the problem we're having. And that's a problem I'm having. I don't understand it. Mandatory COVID inoculations for the, students, everybody. Get a handle on it now.
And Carolyn, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say you opt out every year, so you can vote to opt out every year or not. But it depends on what you're doing for the spraying to see if it's effective or not. In general, spraying is not effective if you are just randomly spraying. However, you don't really know, or you don't anticipate or know what all the future is. So the reason why Deerfield just decided not to do the opt-out is because you don't really know what the scenario is going to be in the future. And with disease, and we could be overrun with Asian tiger mosquitoes that carry the Zika, and then people will be clamoring for spraying, and that is a different kind of spraying than the EEE spraying. I want to make it clear that spraying is effective, but it's not effective
unless it's applied correctly. And when you think about Heath, let's think about Heath. Heath had the triple-E mosquito, and it's usually your disease load is in the end of your season in August. What's happening in Heath? It's getting chilly. The mosquitoes are undercover. Your Menorah mosquito that carries triple-E, that their blood meal is from birds. This is how they transmit it, or it is transmitted. Those are the ones that now have daytime activity, and the spraying is happening at dusk or dawn or whatever, and it's not effective. So I want to clarify that there is proof that spraying is effective. It's just not, I don't think it's going to be effective for us in general. And all the mosquito commissioners, which I am a mosquito commissioner, are definitely against spraying. So it's not like the mosquito district is pro, spraying. And I think you need to understand that the only reason we got a district together is so that we can get data and find out what we have. There's 52 different mosquito species in Massachusetts, and like all the rain we've had, all your container in the next week or two, all your container kind of mosquitoes, like your Culex and your Pippins and your not Menorah, but the other, there's a whole bunch of them. Those are the ones that carry West Nile, and they will be up kicking in population. But hopefully the Menorahs, which would carry triple-E, it's been so dry and they tend to breed early, we've gone beyond the season. And so the whole idea of why you trap, and you have different traps for different kinds of mosquitoes, is that you're collecting the mosquitoes. You also collect the numbers, and you also are checking disease load. So they're sorted, they're sent to DPH to be tested to see if there's any disease load. The whole thing is to get information. And from that information, where your areas are that need to be treated with BTI if necessary. Like Trevor said, Kevin is very inexpensive, a few $100s a year. Kevin just goes to Home Depot, get the little discs, BTI discs, and when he's driving around after like the rainstorms we've had now, not tremendous, big whoosh storms. You do it, you treat after everything's slowed down, and where you're having puddling, and then you just throw out the discs. And so for the first time last year in 12 years, we had no West Nile in Deerfield. Mm-hmm. Hopefully. It normally happens if in Deerfield in the first week in July, over 4th of July weekend. And guess what? We've been clear. So are we going to be clear this year because of this couple of weeks? I don't know. But in general, knowing what's happening in your community allows you to target and be preventative. Mm-hmm. Then if you do have some issues occur, you can put a backpack on and treat it, go make the next step, adulticiding with some, targeted spray if necessary. But that is as far as we're interested in going. And, but who knows what will happen with Zika, and who knows what will happen with climate change. And so why would you want the responsibility of, taking on some kind of program that your town would end up, that everyone that's saying they don't want spraying would be screaming, yelling for spraying. We all know what happens as soon as something emergency is declared. So the idea is just, get as much data as you can and make sure that you understand what's going on. The problem we have is we're a small district in the sense that we have one employee. And we went in 3 years, we've gone from 5 towns, we're now up to 23 towns. And the Quabbin Health District just recommended that, Ware and Belchertown and Pelham join. And so we really are telling them that they have to wait till next year because we just can't trap anymore. We just don't have the time. So what we're hoping that Joe Cumberford will give us a line item so that we can afford seasonal help and a couple more trucks. And, then we can expand the 5,000. And then, so once we get settled in our growth pattern, like how many more towns are going to join, and we think we'll probably be up around 30 by next year. And so I think by then we'll have settled out, and then we're going to try to figure out a way to take into consideration people's population and the geographic area, and also the risks. So, because it is expensive, then this is a brand new line item for people. So we're trying to be sensitive to that. Like I said, it's a shoestring operation, but we are doing this, and trying to get as much information from the Valley so it's available, so people have an idea what's going on.
Any questions for anybody?
I would just like to say that the most mosquito larvae I've ever seen in my life was in your rain gutters.
Yes.
They don't drain. A lot of times they clog up and the water sits there. And I've seen like thousands of mosquito larvae.
Yep.
In those drains. So keep your drains clean.
Yes, good point. Tip over those tires, tip over the potting sheds that are out there. Phoebe's got a hand up, and then it looks like Steve too. Go ahead, Phoebe.
I just wanted to answer or speak a little bit to B's question about sort of what can the FERCOG do to help with that work and working together as a group. And I put it in the chat, but I don't know how many of you are doing this on a phone and aren't seeing it. But this has come up recently because of the health district. The health district membership has about half towns that opted out and half that don't. So we do have Carolyn and some of her colleagues coming to the oversight board meeting next week. And B, I know your Board of Health, I believe, will be there to sort of have a discussion with the district about how can the health district work well with the information being offered by the mosquito control district? We've received copies of all the plans that were submitted and are looking at what are the public education things that people said they wanted to do, and looking at how the public health nurses can help create some of that or support the communities who laid out specific alternate plans. And then in the short term, we have a community health worker this summer who's going around to public events that the Board of Health identifies for her and doing kind of tick and mosquito education. I know she was at the Bernardston Farmers Market last week, so she's open to suggestions and invitations because she's doing her practicum with the health district. So I think to be continued, but definitely health department staff are working to try to figure out how to best support the towns. And just about everybody's now gotten feedback on their plans if they needed to change anything. And are working on that.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd just like to mention is that, people keep asking us about ticks. And the problem is the legislation is old legislation. We were the only mosquito district to be established in the last 40 plus 50 years kind of thing. And we are odd in the sense, as Trevor said, it doesn't come off on the cherry sheet. It's not an automatic assessment and all that kind of stuff. So once we've stabilized and we have funding sources, revenue identified, then we are going to file legislation to address the ticks and be able, become a bug district so we can deal with some of the tick issues because, in my mind, ticks are just as bad. The Lyme seems to be pretty stable in Deerfield. About third of our ticks have Lyme, but it's the other additional bacterial infections. They were just in the last, 5 years, it's gone from 2% to now 12% on the average. So, to me, this is trending in a wrong direction. And it's similar to the diseases, that we see with mosquitoes. It's really trending up too because of climate change. So the idea is to have as much information so that you can be preventative and proactive as possible. And like I said, we're trying to do it as cheap as possible too.
Thank you. Steve? Steve, you had your hand up and then.
I did. Thank you very much. So 3 very quick comments. So Montague's did receive approval for our opt-out application. I can't imagine that our community will ever do anything other than opt-out unless there is some, extraordinary event that shifts opinions. Because, there was no effective advocacy for staying in spraying. I would say that as we were researching things, it looked very apparent to me that if the state believes that there is a health emergency related to mosquitoes in our area, they will spray anyway, and they have the right to do so regardless of the opt-out. So
Yeah.
Montague did not see the same level of risk that Trevor related thinking in Deerfield. You know, I don't know if there'll be a pecking order because we opted out, but, you know, we saw it as we have limited autonomy in this area relative to a true public health emergency. I guess the other thing I would say is this is one of those areas where I don't know that we need more information about the risks of mosquitoes among representatives of this group and our boards of health, but I do think that we need better information about our options. There was a lot of misinformation about mosquito control districts, and as Carolyn mentioned, you know, the Pioneer Valley Control District is very different in its operations and its services than are the others. And I think what we really need to do is establish a clear and kind of fully aligned understanding of what that district offers. Montague does intend to join the district, is my expectation. And we have an appropriation to do so. We were waiting to see whether we were accepted first, and we just got that notice this past Monday. So if they're not taking new members, that's really important information for communities to know, especially as they approach, perhaps some of them may be looking at special town meetings for appropriations. We may need to make other plans, is what I heard. Maybe FERCOG in its coordinating role would be willing to pull together and, you know, convene a session where people could talk and have that engaged conversation in a large group with representatives beyond Carolyn herself of the mosquito control district. And I know it probably feels like it's a timely thing, but I also want to make sure people can get to it. I know that July's almost gone already, and August is a very tough month, but that would be a great thing. The one last note I'll say, when I read the acceptance letter, my takeaway was they said, yeah, you're okay this year, but, you know, we're going to raise the bar next year. That was my reading of the language that we got from the state. And it wasn't about Montague not having a good plan per se. It was about the fact that we can expect to see a different bar. Because I thought overall our plan was less than robust, you know, frankly.
I just want to say, I agree, Steve, that was the most ominous and vaguely threatening acceptance letter I've ever gotten. So,
just like my college acceptance letter. Yeah. Like they knew something about me.
Phoebe, do you still have, you know, your hand was still up, but I didn't know.
I wanted to just say to Steve that the Public Health Roundtable, that we have now transitioned from all COVID all the time to anything public health related on the fourth Monday of every month. The plan is for a discussion about the mosquito control plans and district, either at the July or the August one. I haven't heard back from the folks whether they can come to the July meeting or not, but that conversation you're talking about, maybe to follow up, Carolyn, on your suggestion that maybe people might not be able to join this year. I think if we can get clarity on that for either the July or August, we could maybe have that meeting be that meeting you're discussing, Steve.
Well, what I wanted to just say is that we've been trapping since Memorial Day weekend. So when you say you're joining this year, we are only going another six weeks maybe. So if you hadn't voted to join, you have to have a town meeting vote, and then it has to go to the SRB, the State Reclamation Board, to be voted on to join. So you can't join until September right now. And so when we say that we're just recommending people not to join, it's for this trapping year. Right. So if you are going to go to town meeting, you should vote to join, and then it can go to the SRB, and hopefully we'll have sorted out, you know, services for next year. For, like I said, I think we're going to have like 30 communities at least, from what I'm being told. Now, the task force recommendations that Joe Comerford is sitting on will have impact. And so I think one of the reasons these letters sound so vague is because the task force has to weigh in on what mosquito control is going to look like potentially for next year. It doesn't mean that the governor's going to do it. But, you know, I think it's clear, we tried to make it clear that, you know, we need more state support if you're going to have a startup district that's going to be effective. That's all. I mean, you can't run on $5,000 per town and expect us to, you know, service, you know, 101 community, you know, how many communities there are in the valley. I mean, there's just a lot. So
yeah. Great. Any other questions for this evening? I mean, I think it was a good conversation.
Oh, just one thing, Trevor.
Sure.
I think this was really helpful and informative. So 2 actions out of this. So one, it sounds like, and I know Northfield is on top of it, but I'll say it generally, is to go to the meeting next week per Phoebe's information. That sounds like one action. The second thing is, and this might be more for Carolyn and or Phoebe or the council, is how best to advocate with Senator. I know she's been super helpful with Senator Comerford and the rest of the delegation to really push to get funding in place. So it's not this onslaught. I mean, I just have this vision of Christopher at the Mosquito District, you know, with his truck and his data for his, what were like a fairly small group of towns now being inundated and creating this huge district. That sets up a whole different management structure and financial budget, et cetera. And so do they need to be, have startup money rather than just everyone's putting in their 5K and it's like, oh, well, we'll just figure it out based on.
Well, actually, yeah, actually what we've done is just sent a letter into Joe to see if we could get a supplemental appropriation, because what we intended to do once we got going is to have a North District, which would be basically Franklin County, Central, and then South. And so you would have, you know, at least 3 to 6 seasonal workers that could, you know, set traps and get more data, because let's face it, you know, a few traps in a town isn't going to give you as much information. It's better to have more traps and different kinds of traps.
Right.
We put 2 different kinds of traps in each town, but, you know, it's better to have more information. So the whole point is to get some money. So if you want to call up Elena and tell her you're certainly supporting this, the Mosquito District, because we need the money to be able to offer services, that's a wonderful thing to do.
I'll do one better. I'll get an official letter from the select board at the next meeting, if that will help.
Oh, yes.
I know they're super responsive, but just officially to move our town, our small town's interest forward, and the goals of the overall district, as well as really support all these towns in moving this forward.
That would be wonderful.
Okay,
Wonderful.
I think I'm going to summarize my, I'm looking at all my notes, and maybe I'll just follow up with an email, because I'm looking at from, I forget the guy's name in Shelburne, and his
Yes, Andrew Baker.
Yeah,
Yep.
super helpful.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yep.
certain clarifications that we just all could, it would be helpful for all of us to be working off of. So then I could go to my citizens and say, yeah, here are some really good answers. And it's not just because I had the initiative to call Carolyn and do some Google searching, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Thanks so much for all the time. And
yeah,
this was a really robust,
Great.
robust discussion. It makes me feel good going back into the select board meeting. Like, this is the way government's supposed to work.
Yeah. And thank you, Carolyn, for joining. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
coming.
thank you,
No
Carolyn.
problem.
Thanks. Sure.
I got to go to a senior housing meeting now. So thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. We'll see you.
Bye.
I guess I think that concludes it, unless there's any other business not anticipated. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Greenfield.
Right. Thank you very much.
Who was the first, please?
Oh, B.
Okay.
Yeah. B from Northfield.
Thank you.
And second from Greenfield. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you have a wonderful summer, and hope to see you all around at different events. And thank you for joining tonight.